Welcome, everyone. Today, we're going to talk about the non-agent and non-queue data in Webex Contact Center. So, most people run reports. It's usually, by agent, by queue, by team, that kind of stuff, and to get counts as to what their people are doing, or what's going on at the call queue level. And so, for a lot of our users who are coming from Webex or from Cisco UCCX to Webex Contact Center, and they had our UCCX reporting. That's kind of what they're used to. The reports in UCCX were either agent based or queue based, with some filtering you can do in the back end, but everything was either presented by agent or by queue. With Webex Contact Center, we kind of left that, or we didn't repeat that same trend, and now the reporting kind of looks like our main offering, whether it's Cisco Call Manager or Webex calling, Zoom or Teams reporting, where you can filter and report and group on basically anything we have in the database. And so you can still report on agents and teams and queues, and that's probably where most of our users are going to lean towards. But we do have the ability to now report on everything else that's not an agent, not a team, or not a queue. And so here's some examples that I've kind of pulled out that I think we can kind of squeeze into the 30 minutes that we have available today. So one of the ones, and this is the one that I've been kind of playing with mostly recently, is looking at callbacks. That would come up sometimes when reporting or on the UC6 side. How do we see these callbacks? And within Webex Contact Center, it's really easy, but the data is a little bit different than what I kind of originally expected to see. So within callbacks, and if you go into the source criteria here, I'm in our sandbox that we'll be using for our internal stuff. We do have callbacks, and you can just search. Type in the word callback, or scroll down and look for the callback section. And that is, I always forget where it's at. Callback. So here it is. Callback. So under the callback group, if you're looking for only callback calls, you want to select the is callback criteria, add it, and then you'll see just a simple toggle. Is callback yes or no, or yes or not yes, I should say. If it's not really yes or no, it's more so when this is turned off, it's including all call records no matter what. When it's turned on, it's only including the callback record. So if I were to do this, and there's a handful of callback records in our database, turn it on as callback, view results, and then it should pull back, I think, 3 records or 3 different sequences. And there we go. So we have a total of 44 different events. These make up, 3 different sequences. We can turn this, we can dump this, or I already have it. I already ran the report ahead of time, just in case, because things happen when you're on webinars. And so this is a simple export. It's a call export. It's not even like a save template I created. This is just simply, is callback true? We have 3 different contacts or 3 different sequences, and then my different stats. And so when we're taking a look at the data, you can see all the different events here, and I can go down to the cradle to the grave down here. And so this is what we're getting when a call or when a caller leaves a callback. And so this is just a normal call. Caller comes in, and one thing I should mention, if you haven't been on any of my other previous webinars, when you're looking at and you're trying to understand the call flow and you're looking at the details of a Webex Contact Center record, it is very, I don't want to say it's important, but it's going to help you a lot if you include the event name column in your detail section, because then you can kind of read the event names and get an idea of what's going on. Because I would say out of all the different platforms that we support, this platform has the highest number of records per like a single call. And so, and Webex is very generous at what they give us in the contact center data, but it can also be kind of a lot. And so when you're looking at the events, this event name is going to help you really when it comes to filtering your certain scenarios or just understanding what's going on. So we have the call number. They called in. The event name is new, means the call originates. So this is when the call begins right here. This is your timestamp. Hits the flow for the CCX users. That's like a script. And then we get the different activities. It connects to the IVR. And again, a lot of these are zero duration records. So these events, sometimes it's just something connecting and it's instant. So it's not all of these events should have a duration. It connects to the IVR. It's for 3 seconds. It gets a flow. The call is queued. So this is just the call being assigned to a queue. It's always going to be a zero duration record from what I've seen. And then we get, IVR done. It's always a zero duration record. There's no duration to this. So we can see it hits the IVR, gets queued, and then parked. So when the call is actually sitting in the queue, that's where that duration is represented by the parked event. And then we get some more flow. And then in our sandbox, when the call is queued, they're given an option, press 1 for callback. And so at this point, at 11:30 and 17 seconds, they're queued. And then we get this event here, opt out of queue. So 11:30 and 33 seconds, 17 seconds. So it takes them about roughly 15 and change or 16 seconds for them to select the option to leave or for a callback. So this is when they start the queue, or when they enter the queue, or start their queue time, and then they opt out of queue. So when they opt out of the queue, they keep their spot in the queue, but instead of waiting on the call, Webex Contact Center just simply first calls the agent, and then if the agent when an agent answers, then it calls the contact of the customer, and then it connects both sides of the call, and the call resumes, or whatever happens with the rest of the call. So at this point, what we're really seeing is once the caller opts out and opts out for a callback, the call terminates, or we stop getting new rows of data. Call's over, or not over, but it's the call. We stop getting new records, and then everything moves to the callback data here. So going back to verify, you'll see this is from leftover from surveys, but if you look for callback, it's down here. So all these different callback records or columns you can add to your not just your call history, but you can add them to the report as well. And so everything that happens once the caller leaves the queue or leaves or opts out for the callback, everything is then represented based in these callback columns. So is callback is true, that's applied to the entire sequence. And then the request time, stuff like the request time when the callback was connected, which happens after, the number that was called back, the status, was it a success, was it a failure, where did the callback come from, what type of callback, which queue, all this information here, even the agent name. Like here, I've got the agent full name. It's not populated in any of the records because none of these events actually were presented to an agent. The agent comes in the data at the callback name. So here we get Victor as the agent who handled the callback because his name appears in the callback agent name field. But because these records never went to, we don't get like the actual agent record. Vic doesn't show up in any of these records here. So when you're looking at the callback data, if you want to see the details in the callback, it's important to include, the columns with callback in the name. So we do see when the request was made, 11:30 and 33 seconds. We can see here, opt out of queue, 11:30 and 33 seconds. So we can see this, these two match. And then the callback connection time, 11:33 and 43 seconds. So in this sample, or this example, this is a test scenario. I believe Vic called in, and then he requested a callback. And at this point, I think the agent, he was not ready, and then he went ready 11 seconds later, which is why you get the callback connection. And so you can also see that the event time here, the opt out of queue time, includes the time. I'm sorry. He waited for I misread. He waited for 3 minutes and 10 seconds, give or take, before he went available and received the call. So this time, this duration here also includes the time the caller waited for a callback. This time up here, this queue time includes the time the caller was in the queue before they opted out. So it includes the entire queue time. This time includes with the opt-out of queue duration include or represents the time the caller from when they disconnected to when they received the callback from the agent or from the queue. So with all this data here, we can see whether or not the callback was a success. We do have a failure example here where I think in this example the agent answered and then hung up really quickly. So there wasn't really any duration to the call. So from there, we can definitely build a report that just includes opt-out data. So here, my example, let me go back to reports, opt-out of queue. So what I did, I built a simple report where I have two different search sets. I have a search set for callback failure and a search set for callback success. I have I'm looking at the event name for both opt-out of queue, callback status, either success or failure. And if you want to filter by certain queues or by teams or by agents, you can do that. In this case, I'm looking at just the support queue. And then from there, you can group if you want to. But in this case, because I have my two different search sets, I'm looking at contact count, event durations at average, and then max to get an idea of how long it's taking for those callbacks to be or for them to be to become the number one caller in the queue. And then if you want, you can include detail. So in my report here, I've got my two rows: how many callbacks were a failure, how many were a success. I've got three different samples, and then I've got two for contacts, one for failure. The event duration in this case is because I'm filtering on the opt-out record. It's how long it took total for a call or a caller or a contact to be called back. On average, how long are they waiting for a callback? And then what's the max time they're waiting for a callback? And then I got my detail here. So this is a real quick report that's just going to show you, your callback failure or success. You can build one for one team, multiple teams, queues, agents, or callback agents in that way, and then expand it that way. So I'll keep that. So leaving the callbacks behind, another feature or another report type that we get asked for a lot on the CCX side that we can definitely do on the Webex Contact Center side is looking at wrap-up data. So like when an agent ends a call, they're given the option to include a wrap-up code. And so let me build a report here. I've got a report already built. And we can definitely report on that and verify. So going back to the call history, just to kind of show you the search criteria, if I search for wrap-up, there's definitely wrap-up time. So that's the time after a call terminates. We can include that in the report, which we could also do in CCX. But we can also, just build a report based on wrap-up codes. So when you have those wrap-up codes built in Control Hub or created in Control Hub, we can include them in the sync, and then you can pick from the list one or more wrap-up codes, select them, and then run a search. There may or may not be data. We'll see what we get here. I think Case Close has a couple of records, but so yeah, when you have a code or when you have one or more codes and you include them in a report, I have let that run. I built a simple wrap-up code report. In this case, I'm looking for, I'm filtering based upon team, but again, you can do it by queue, by agent, whatever you want to build your search on, you can. And then in the grouping, I did a couple different reports in this case, but in this case, in this report, my initial grouping was on the queue name, and then my secondary grouping was based on the wrap-up code. So I've got 26 calls into my support queue, and then I have a breakdown per wrap-up code as to what code was used. So building inquiry was used twice, case closed twice. I've got 14 calls where the agent didn't take a wrap-up code. So we can look at and get a report based on what codes are being used by the agents who answer calls from each queue, and then expanding it further. I can take that same report and just change my grouping. So this is the same report, but instead, it is actually the same report. Here I'm grouping it by agent, so I can see, like for Annie, or for Jeff in this case, my two agents. I can see, what I can see what wrap-up codes they've been using, how many times, Jeff has been using a bunch of different wrap-up codes, a couple calls with, without wrap-up codes. I've had some customers where, they want their agents to use a wrap-up code for every call. So, it's worth saying, well, why didn't Jeff use, why were there 4 calls where Jeff didn't use wrap-up code? Is it because maybe an appropriate code doesn't exist? Do you have to add more codes to Control Hub? Or, are they forgetting to use wrap-up codes when they terminate the call? So yeah, there's different reasons why, you may want to include group by wrap-up code or see what codes are being selected by your agents. But in this case, you can, for most reports, group by team, by agent, or by queue. And there's different ways to filter those reports. Yes, I think there's one more I didn't include here. No, same report. Okay, there we go. So moving on, another option or another non-agent team or queue option that we can report on is reporting on surveys. So much like the callbacks, there is a survey completed toggle to where if it is on, this will include only the calls where a survey was completed. So going back to my reports, I have a survey completed report where I did the same thing as I did with the callback report, where I have the calls that completed the survey. So in this case, I'm looking at a specific queue, but again, you can filter by team or by agent, however you want to do it. I'm looking for you don't have to do event name is connected. And let me get my server report up here. You don't have to only filter on one event, because if you're reporting on contact count, your contact count is basically your sequence count. So you don't have to filter on a specific event, but kind of like going back to this data here, where you're looking at different events. When a call is handled by an agent, we get the event name connected, and this is where it's answered. When the call is presented, like a ringing, we get a connect event, and then when it's handled, we get the connected event. I kind of playing around with different events. If you want to limit the date, like the detailed data, or maybe you want to limit like your event data. So if you want to use your contact durations or your event durations, you can filter on a specific event. So in this case, I only care about the events that were actually handled by an agent, and then I have survey completed is true. So I'm only caring in this case about the calls that were completed. So let me do this. So this is the output from that report, where I only have just a completed survey, and then I'm grouping it by the agent name. So maybe you want to push your agents to recommend surveys to the customers, and maybe there's some sort of like competition or friendly challenge to see how many which agents or how many surveys the agents can get the callers to complete. So in this case, we only have the one, which was Jeff, but we can do the completed survey and see how many calls or how many contacts completed the survey for each agent. So Jeff right now is the only one with one. But this report was a little bit different, where I had 2 different criteria. One was looking for all the calls into the queue, and this was looking for all the calls that were completed. So we have 26 calls when you're filtering by the initial, which I don't have here anymore, looking at the completed survey. So I have 26 calls into the queue, and then out of the second criteria, I just have the one. So I could expand it, include different stuff like the grouping or the details, and just do kind of expand on what we can see.